Everybody, nice to see you. Where is everybody? There's only
Yeah,
37 people.
we're missing 100 participants.
We're missing about 100, yes.
Yes, that's right. We have lost 100
And
people.
it can't be the excuse that they are outside in the beautiful summer weather because this is an online course and I'm sure that you have been outside in the summer weather for many weeks already. So, well, we'll see how it goes.
Yeah, maybe we get people, but let's start. They will join
I will
shortly.
now push mute all to everybody. There were a lot of, sorry, Jari, I had to mute you with this master stroke, but there was a lot of microphones open. But let's get going. As we said last time, has it been a long trip? Has it been a short one? We just talked that feels like this course kind of goes very fast. This year actually went really fast because we had that double week where we had two lectures. And we started only late, started in 7th of May. So actually this has been a bit condensed. But let's go back to the final exercise we asked you to do for last week, and it was a pleasure to read. Really well done, everybody. I just put a couple of names over there and just one example, just the example here in the picture. I think it might be Mikael, yours or somebody's, just to give you, hey, that was just fantastic reflections and writing it in beautifully. And, at least those names, many of you did a good job, but, round of applause to everybody who actually made the effort. It was just as a teacher, it is lovely to see that, hey, you actually took the opportunity and made the most of this course and didn't necessarily want to go where it's the easiest path. So thank you for that, and great job, everybody who put an effort into this. And what did you come up with? So for those of you who did not do the exercise, the last exercise was in all simplicity that we put two people together and the other person had a task to design a workshop. And now the other person's task was to facilitate the other person who is designing the workshop. And then they switched the roles and did the same thing. So what kind of reflections and learnings did you get out of this when it comes to facilitation and helping and all of this? And one big theme that you had was that kind of the benefits, really experiencing the benefits of having another pair of eyes, kind of a fresh pair of eyes or a neutral pair of eyes in a way. Not just your colleague, but actually all of you more. I think all of you, some of you might be colleagues, but let's say practically all of you were outsiders. So here's some good stuff that you wrote. First, it's something you couldn't really achieve on your own because being objective about your own work is difficult. Kind of like a law of nature and really nicely written there. But then you get an outsider and you actually get somebody who can be maybe more objective. One of you wrote, reviewing her work, referring to the pair or the partner, also made me reflect on my own and ask myself if every part of my workshop truly helped reach the goal. And which is the third quote over here as well, is pretty much that actually facilitating the other person started this reflection process about your own workshop as well. So those of you who have been a mentor, coach, teacher, facilitator, you know this quite well, that actually being a facilitator makes you a better expert, to put it that way. Third quote, interestingly, facilitating the design of a workshop led me also to think more deeply about how I planned my workshop. Pretty much the same as the second one. Fourth one, made me reflect on how easy it is to overfill workshops with content, when the real value often lies in clear outcomes and space for reflection. I think this is a very common for everybody. That
Yes.
especially if we get an opportunity, workshop, we're finally getting all these people together. We want to solve all the problems in the universe in that 2-hour workshop, and then you're just clogging things. Jari, you want to say something?
Yeah. Actually, I really like this all those, but this final one is really so usual. And for example, as teacher, we tend to have all this stuff must be packed in the course or packed in a workshop, packed in a lecture, and it's really much the content we are doing, but really the impact is coming from the what's the process, how we participate, how we make sense, and really being critical about that what are the questions we have a 2-hour workshop or 1-hour workshop or whatever, so that how much we can, what's kind of in a way minimalistic design in
Minimalistic,
content
yeah.
wise, but really letting people to share and talk and experience the this kind of mutual generation. And so that's really a important point.
Then actually I had one more here I added because I think this was a really good one. I had a good balance between listening and pushing. They said it was valuable not to let things sidetrack and have the courage to interrupt at times. So this person is talking about facilitation. So listening, which is obviously very important, but I like the fact that they used the word here pushing, and they got feedback that this was actually nice, which actually brings me to the next point in the next slide is kind of like how much, this is like a classical question about facilitation, how much should the facilitator bring their own views? Are they neutral or are they not? Well, you can see in the headline pretty much my take on this is that yes, you can bring your own ideas, but you should probably ask a permission and be kind of sensitive about the context. We're going to come back to this later. Yeah, Jari, go ahead.
Yes. I mean, this also so I think it's really in this kind of helping roles that how much you can bring your own stuff, and we were discussing in before as well that being aware how to offer your own expertise and so on. So permission, right? But then also that yes, permission. Well, I have one idea, but would you like to hear? And then what do you think about this? So not just saying that do this, and being cautious that how people are taking, but letting them the persons, the participants, and that's really to evaluate and reflect on that idea, but withdrawing totally, not telling anything. So that can be really bit awkward for yourself as well. But being cautious. That's
yeah. Now that you said that, I remember last year somebody put it very nicely that you can bring your own thinking as a resource into the conversation.
Yes, indeed.
But of course, what you are talking here and is important is to kind of be sensitive to power structures or the kind of the authority structures here. But let's see what did some of you write. First quotation, it is important to think about your role if you are a subject expert. How much would you would participate by yourself and how much you focus on facilitation. So I think that's nicely put, that even, you need to be sensitive. You probably need to take a stand and say that, okay, I'll start by being a little bit more facilitative and less participatory. Next comment, facilitator armed with domain knowledge can steer discussions with precision, anticipate sticking points, ask the right questions, and guide the group towards practical outcomes instead of idle theorizing. The expertise keeps the conversation grounded and immensely productive. So I think this is a kind of raising the flag for domain expertise, that there's definitely benefits if you understand the domain, that you are not that neutral, because you can be very productive in steering the conversation if it all goes well. Third one, there's a fine line between guiding someone and inadvertently steering them. Nicely put. Last, the one who is being facilitated could also ask feedback during the session. I think this was brilliant, because the person who's being facilitated kind of should be on the, behind the steering wheel, so to speak. And it means that they also have a responsibility that they can open the conversation, going like, hey, what do you think? Have you been in this? Give the opportunity for the other one to say that, well, actually, yeah, I thought that I would do this, or this thing came to my mind. So remember, when you're being facilitated, just, all simplicity, ask the facilitator, well, what do you think I should do? Doesn't mean you need to follow the orders, but then I had one more here, was that I'm pretty silent and I have sometimes hard time formulating constructive questions. I come up with questions often later, as I have had a chance to think about the context for a couple of hours. So I think this was an excellent point, that we are different. Some of us can be very quick in a situation, but I would say most of us, need the time to digest, and it could take a couple of hours, couple of days, and we go like, now for some reason I realized that this and this could work. And I think that's actually really good to say aloud or write down there, that, it goes back to your personal style and what kind of facilitator are you. Maybe you are a facilitator who's more silent and comes back with good ideas after a couple of hours or a couple of days, and that's perfectly fine.
And one point, sometimes it could be that if you don't have any questions, then one trick, which is sort of not maybe risky, but in a way that but we could also say that what would you ask from yourself now? So I don't know what to ask, but what would you ask? But so having this kind of circular idea that challenging people that what you don't see, or is there something you would like to ask now from yourself or from others, and so on. So and so it's not always need to find a good questions, but we can also generate put it back. But of course, it can be sometimes a little risky as well.
Actually, this reminds me of an academic doctoral defense I was many years ago. And those of you who are not familiar, especially in Finland, there is the person who's trying to get the doctorate degree and they are defending their thesis. And then there's an opponent, and the opponent is kind of asking tough questions about the thesis. And this opponent was brilliant because it did exactly, Jari, what you just did. The opponent went like, well, dear defender, what would you ask yourself in this situation? It was hilarious.
Yeah.
Okay. And then, so anyway, the two big points I wanted to make was that many of you highlighted the importance and the simple benefit of having another pair of eyes. This is powerful, this is simple. And the other thing that comes up every year is this kind of finding a balance or striking a balance between, like the one in the middle says, guiding versus steering, or asking, your views, their views. And there's no right and wrong. It kind of depends. But also there were plenty of other really good observations from you. So let's go one by one. First one, I noticed how easy it is to overlook accountability and long-term impact. Being facilitated helped me simplify my workshop plan and focus on real value. So this is something I think we talked on the third lecture or something like that about the goals and the dumb goals. Accountability is, it is difficult but powerful. But maybe the other person can help you by asking dumb questions that you actually get the accountability. Second comment, I also experienced how important it is to feel truly heard. Facilitation is more about creating space than having the answers. It's a very nice way of putting it. So as a facilitator, sometimes the best thing you can do is to create this space where this other person can have a safer space or an open space or a creative space to, talk aloud, try out new ideas, just verbally before planning the actual workshop. Third one, I noticed moments where silence helped them reflect more deeply. Yes.
I really
can be good.
Yeah. I really like this because sometimes as I guess me and Risto, we are quite quick telling good ideas and so on, but it's sometimes tricky when people have different rhythms, and really having this kind of sensitivity to have a pauses or at least silence as well when people can really think. And so that can be really reflective moment, and I like also this silence can also create a space for other to think, and but not that then being sensitive, not interrupt too quickly, and really when others are doing the thinking work. So I think that's also very important notice.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm going to highlight the kind of the connection between silence and the space creation. I think that's as simple as that. Next one goes, next time I would be more confident in navigating the dialogue flow. I would also prepare a small personal cheat sheet, breaking the dialogue into clear stages. Why not? Brilliant idea, That was kind of, what we try to give you a lot of cheat sheets is kind of like, why not, have some kind of a, checklist or something to help you as a facilitator. Have you asked this? Remember to be quiet, always wait 3 seconds before saying anything or something like that, whatever works for you. This is pretty much the same that we had earlier, but I think it's another way of putting this important. Scope creep is seductive. Kept wanting to solve the entire systemic problem rather than focus on what one workshop could realistically achieve. So it's the same thing again, but I think this is kind of a original sin of workshopping is that you're just cramming too much stuff into one. Scope creep, good word. Last one, the hardest part of facilitation is handling difficult situations, like when there's conflict or pushback, without making anyone, including ourselves, feel shut down or uncomfortable. This is something I think we talked a couple of lectures ago. I think in the one of the very, was it the second one or even the first one? Which I put it here just to remind us that yes, that's kind of what I would call kind of next level of facilitation. More or less things probably go smoothly in workplaces because everybody more or less wants to things go smoothly. But, then reality hits in. We have conflicts and we have problems. We are human and there might be actually really difficult situations. And I guess the part of this is if you are a supervisor, if you're a boss to somebody, then obviously you most probably need to deal with difficult situations that come because you have the legal obligation to do it as well. But just to remind, facilitation can be actually very difficult if there is a lot of difficult issues to tackle. Anyway, to sum it up, kind of that there is no right or wrong answers, and I think that's probably obvious by now. But we can see from your answers, and we're hoping from all of these exercises, you can see that certain themes pop up that you should be mindful of, things that you should probably consider before facilitating a workshop, or maybe something that you want to kind of consider in the big picture. What kind of a facilitator are you? Maybe it's even what kind of a boss are you? What kind of a supervisor are you? What's your role? What's your angle into this? What kind of techniques you have in your back pocket that you can use? And last, but what's your own style? Are you more of a listener? Are you a quiet person who comes up later? Are you the kind of the quick person? Do you play dumb? Do you play smart? What works for you? What are you comfortable with? I think that's super important. And I put kind of this as well. A good facilitator is conscious about at least these things that I think we have been over and talked a couple of times in this course. That there's a difference between how do you plan a workshop and how do you facilitate planning a workshop. And then what we talked a little about is more like, are you an expert giving an advice, or are you a facilitator who has more of this neutrality as well? Those are two different things, kind of two different hats to wear. Then we talk a lot about, are you focusing on the actual thing being done, or are you zooming out and helping to facilitate the before and the after, temporal dimensions? And then the difference of role of a facilitator. And I hope that during this course, you kind of experience that, what does it feel to be facilitated? I think that's, if you want to be really good at facilitation, you need to be at the other end of the facilitation as well and get the feeling and that how does it feel and what kind of a facilitatee are you? And just putting it simply to the last line, there's a difference between giving an answer or facilitating an answer. What is 5 times 5? Are you going to give an answer that is 25, or are you the person who's facilitating somebody to give the answer, whatever it is? And there's a subtle difference between them. Or to put it another way, as a facilitator, kind of how do you address these things? How do you address your expertise in relation to their expertise? Your agenda in relation to their agenda? Your opinions in relation to their opinions? Your techniques, tools in relation to their techniques and tools? Your personality in relation to their personality, and so forth and so forth. And these are things that, you should consider. And you can be very technical about them, or you can be very abstract and theoretical about them, but they are there. And to kind of give some kind of an answer here is that just remember, it can be as simple as just asking the other person or the people you are facilitating, what are they? What do they want? What would you like what would you like to get out of this? Maybe you get a new boss, and then maybe if they're a good boss, they would go like, okay, what kind of a relationship you want this to be? What kind of a service agreement you want to sign? Or if you go and facilitate a workshop or a sprint or something like this, it's just to, ask people in all simplicity, what are you looking for in this workshop or in this facilitation? And then start that conversation. So that's the wrap up from the exercise and kind of the basic things that you probably need to consider as a facilitator. If you have anything, just add into the chat and we'll get it from there. So the first breakout room coming up soon. But to kind of the warm up for the first breakout room is this, that actually what has happened during this course? What were the course's objectives, and kind of refreshing your minds. And then we're going to ask you to go together into breakout rooms and kind of discuss that. Okay, what did you get out of this course? What did you get out of this course? What was meaningful for you? So what has happened? Aims and processes experience. Let's look what we have done. Course objective. We were hoping that this course would change your thinking about leadership, about organizations, facilitating change. And I guess mainly kind of pointing out that this is actually very practical, can be very repetitive, meaning that you're doing over and over and over things. And it can get very personal as well. Just a couple of points to your own style, your own ways of doing, your own way of thinking and being mindful and sensitive about them. And then the others, of course, facilitation is extremely social thing. And how did we were hoping that, you had more or less different partner pair every time for those exercises, and you had new people in the breakout rooms and kind of pushing you to listen to other people as well and maybe facilitate them and, even writing down the comments into the chat. And also hoping that these simple tools, I'm going to list soon, that they were easy to take, that they maybe, they have something fundamental in them, in their simplicity. Just to remind you what we had these 6 lectures, 6 topics. We started with the uncertainty, different lenses, that there's no single truth about organization. I talked about organizational transformations, that, it's as old as humanity, and we have different models about this, and it can happen different ways. There was a bit of an emphasis on the lean, agile design thinking, and the whole point being there that, you should have shared meanings between people, and then kind of that grows into autonomy and grows into a culture that can change the whole way the organization works. Jari talked about facilitation in depth, more like looking at how does it look like, what different aspect has it, digging deeper into it. And then last week I talked about the tools, sprints, running a workshop, what to think, looking at tools as a cultural object, looking tools as more than just a tool, that it's actually foundation stones for different cultures. And now we are in the reflection part. These are the exercises for those of you who don't remember. We started with understanding the organizational context. We drew an onion, understanding the temporal context. Then we had the importance of dumb goals. That goal clarification is, always if you don't know what to do, goal clarification can take you forward. And then we had the listening and the reflection part. And now the last exercise was just what we went over, coaching a whole workshop. Good. Before the breakout rooms. So let's take a couple of minutes for you before we open the rooms. Maybe write down or in your mind 2-3 bullet points. And thinking about this course as a whole, what has been meaningful for you? And what are your own personal key takeaways from this whole thing? So let's have that for a couple of minutes, and then Jaakko will open the breakout rooms. Or meanwhile, while we wait, does anybody want to say out loud any thoughts or comments or anything? Just go ahead, and it's open mic night.
Well, this was talked in our group that if you ask Finnish people that, does anyone have any questions? There's silence. And then there, for a moment or forever, but then someone might ask something. But at first there's silence.
We knew that. That's why we're comfortable in the silence. But anyway, super thanks, Susanna, for breaking the silence. Anybody else? Susanna gets the extra points. +1 to the final grade. I'm looking at the comments coming into the chat as well.
Yeah.
couple of good ones, like someone wrote that, or Apo, you wrote here, in the course is what you decide to make of it. Yeah. Life is what you decide to make of it. It's kind of what's the energy you bring into the situation, whether it's a course or a workshop or a workplace. Absolutely. Let's see what else. Yeah, international people from different backgrounds. We're really happy to see that as well. Gives a little bit of diversity to the mainly Finnish audiences that we have typically. Let's see what else.
So Hugo, please.
Yeah, I think even though you talked a lot during the long lectures, but I think most of or a lot of your talking was highlighting that things are not as simple or as straightforward as people sometimes think or assume. And a lot of your talking was making us think, was not telling us things, was just forcing us to think.
Okay.
And of course that allows us to be more also agile and flexible to the situations that we'll encounter. But perhaps, I don't know, sometimes people prefer or feel more comfortable looking or being told what to do. Or like the workshop, we designed the workshop ourselves, we bounced the ideas with a partner, but you never came to us and say, okay, if you have a workshop, these are the best practices. But also because it's difficult, if not impossible, maybe best practices, you can kind of put them together, but the contexts change so much that the important tools are to understand and to be able to think and critically evaluate what's happening instead of trying to push a round peg through a square hole or something, because that's what happens when you're given a tool, then you apply it everywhere and you are not thinking, does it even make sense in this situation? So it's kind of where to get the balance of having enough knowledge that if you now have to go on a change project, I have some tools and I'll like this one and I'll apply it. And it's not just thinking or thought process. But of course, you also gave us some tools and you gave us a lot of extra literature to go through and links to things that you can download even and check. So there's a lot of information still to, in my case, still to read.
Yeah, thanks. That's super valuable. When you said that, Hugo, got me thinking that in this world where we have the AIs and the chat GPTs all the time, I'm kind of hoping that Jari and me here kind of provide you with something that, chat GPT is really good at giving you direct answers if you ask, which kind of means that, hey, what about the stuff where you don't want direct answers, where you need to kind of think yourself? So kind of hoping that
And
that
ChatGPT
resonates
doesn't
with what
ask
you
you
said.
back.
Yeah, nowadays
It
it's
doesn't
more of a
ask you
dialogue.
questions.
It's getting better, isn't it? Great. But hey, we are also very keen on schedule, because schedule gives you safety, because it gives you predictability. And it is 5 o'clock here in Finland, and it's time for the 5-minute break. Let's get back. Continue 6 past with Jari.
Yep. Already hope you had a good break and wanted to come back. But let's take now. So we have quite a bit talk about this meta kind of thing, reflection and planning and so and let's take it now next, let's say roughly 15 minutes, about when we're talking about meta skills and routines, what are those and why they matter when we are talking about facilitation and as a practice, and also facilitate as ourselves as facilitators. So how these practices are part of our professional competence and professional practice as well. But what we talk about when we talk about meta skills and what and why, and then meta routines, what are those and why do they matter, and finally, if we take this seriously, how can we learn and improve? When we're talking about meta skills, one definition is that they are those skills which kind of master others, magnify and activate other skills. So it's in a way higher order.
Jari, sorry to interrupt. Are you sharing? I can't see anything at least.
You can't. All right, sorry.
Is it just me or?
I can see. We can
And it's
see.
just me.
Yeah,
Sorry,
I can see
everybody.
as well.
Oh, it was
I
just
see.
so. So you are seeing, right? Okay, great. So, and of course, we all have such skills already because kind of learning and planning, and so we are doing that. But when we are now working in this kind of role, like helping others or making impact, it's already kind of meta role in a way, and that's why it's also important to really take this more deliberate kind of stance and attitude that we build those meta skills consciously. And now, of course, when there is as we have been talking about changing world, there's a lot of uncertainties, discontinuities, disruptions. So there's more and more needs to adapt, make sense, and more needs to learn and transform. So these kind of skills, how to make sense, how to understand, how to reflect, are of course even more important to all of us, and also collectively. And of course, as said, we all have reached a certain level of these skills throughout life experience, some more, some less, and as we are now talking about our education, somehow these skills maybe have been a little bit neglected in past years or back in days, but now they have become more and more, let's say, conscious part of our education or university education as well. So we are talking quite a bit also, well, reflection, group skills, leadership skills, and so forth, and also this kind of self-management skills and practices. And I would argue that's even more important. And now, when thinking what are those and how we can think about this meta skill, I have generated one kind of illustration. This was initially about kind of leadership competencies and skills, but I think it is very well adaptable to also this kind of facilitator's skill set. And when we are working as facilitators or leaders in a core, there are such skills which are somehow concerning ourselves, and some of that is quite a bit about being aware and so on. But first thing is that when we are working as facilitator, it's not just the kind of technical competence, because we are involved as persons. So and that's why kind of self-awareness is core thing, because we all have certain kind of self-awareness. We have certain worldview, view of human nature, certain lenses which we talk about, how I perceive the world, what are my values, and what are my also kind of identities, purpose, mission, professionally, and maybe in life in general. And so the question, who am I, and why do I do this stuff? What we are doing? If I'm kind of change agent, why on earth? So what are my motives and drivers? Why this practice? And then my strengths, development needs, emotions, temper. So and then most, well, I would say one important thing is also that am I knowing how others perceive and experience working with me, and then it's important to get feedback. So and that help us to be even more influential. But becoming self-aware is, of course, we know ourselves, but I think this kind of extended version where we also ask from others is quite let's say useful, and of course it's a kind of peeling onion in a way that we can we know ourselves, but then we can become even more knowing even better through experiences and reflections and feedback. Then the other side is self-regulation. So how we manage ourselves, and this is pretty much about our agenda, practices, task, time, energy, and so on. So this is more generic. But when thinking about facilitations, also how we, as we have been discussing a lot about listening or taking a position on withdraw, not saying giving advice and so on. So it's pretty much this regulating our behavior and also in situations. But it's also more generally, for example, this not falling out of the role. So keeping up the role boundaries and being able to be reflexive and present and so on. So that's all is there in this category of self-regulation or self-management. And then third thing is learning. So how we and ability to learn from experience is quite pivotal here, because as this course has been also practicing stuff. So this is something what we learn. This facilitation and being in relations and being impactful is something that we learn through experience. But then we have to also take moments of reflection. So this kind of getting experience in reflecting and repeating and really deliberately learning stuff is essential. And then here being sensitive to get feedback and having also kind of critical stance, which meaning that accepting that I don't know everything and there's other views, and the critical stance helps us to be curious how others are perceiving, and let us not being that I know best, but really being curious how others are perceiving. And as facilitator, again, this is a very good stance that we are curious how others perceive, and of course knowing that what we know as well. And so, but so I would argue that this is very important. This kind of meta skill. Then when we expand this view, we come to this kind of social and interpersonal skill set. And the first, if you have a self-awareness, then I would argue that we need kind of good social and contextual awareness, meaning that being generic, have a generic understanding about, let's say, organizational dynamics or how teams work, what happens in a team when people working in a team, or and what's all that. But then especially our own context. So what's kind of cultural processes and nature of change in organization, and also emotionality in organizations. We were also talking here that in a change situation, emotions are involved quite heavily, quite often, and how really somehow sensitize ourselves to this kind of emotionality in organization as well. But this contextual awareness is quite pivotal, and it's not knowing only that we should know the substance, but we should know what happens between people and how we read that. And then influencing, building relationship, that's maybe more traditional leadership stuff, but I'd argue that this is the same thing when we are working as a consultant or facilitator, that we are able to build good working and positive contributive kind of relationships, and understanding that how we can really position ourselves as helpers, but then also understand that there is different dynamics between people as well, different roles. And finally, maybe this actual facilitation or helping stance is or skill set is what I refer here as a coaching and transforming skills, that we can really be helpful in supporting others to learn and and have this kind of helpful and emancipatory stance when being there, that we want to not know best or put our egos a little bit away, but then really facilitate and support people to engage and be active when they are working with their change or some other stuff. And of course, then we might have a substantial and contextual knowledge around and knowing the industry and context and some technical expertise in some cases. That's also helpful. But I would argue that this core is kind of when we talk about this kind of relational professions like facilitation or leadership, this core is be more, let's say, take deliberate stance to investigate and document and think and learn these skills. And of course, we can argue whether they are really kind of meta skills or just professional skills. They are maybe the mixture. But now when we're thinking about meta skills and routines, then those are now routines and practices, or coming back to this still, that highlighting that this learning reflection skills are maybe the most important in when we talk about facilitation and learning. But then routines and practices, how we really keep ourselves on track, improve our performance, develop our capabilities, learn continuously and grow as a person. So those, what are the routines which support us to do this? And for a change agent, I would argue that keeping up a curiosity. So okay, I know this, but what else could there be, and how others are perceiving? So and then it's kind of experimentation, experiencing deliberately is one thing, and learning to be reflexive in a good way, and then learning from experience and reflecting on those experiences, I would say. And finally, how could I improve? So we were talking in the first session, the lenses. So polishing our lenses. So what are my values, principles, theory of facilitation, leadership, and building our personalized style and practice. So and then getting experiences, because that's pretty much how we learn. But then also using different concepts for reflection, asking feedback. So I think that's being hungry for feedback is quite good for our learning. And then, as said many times, reflecting on experiences and writing down. So updating the personal theory of being impactful or influential. And then talking others, as you have been opportunity here to really socialize, talking to others and helping others, then it's also in our own learning. We can find persons with whom we can really reflect on, and whether it's mentor, coach, or just peer or trusted other, then that's tend to be very, very helpful for us. And then accepting that we can always learn more and deeper, and that's why it's also good every now and then to take time, stop and think, like this kind of process or whatever that is. I know that stuff, but now having this kind of process, we can take a moment to check where I'm going now, and even if there's similar stuff, then this at best allows us to think through again. And so this kind of confirming processes are always quite often good as well. So getting back to basics every now and then. But of course, then also learning new tools, new stuff, trying those, but then having a good balance between these. So this was pretty much about the meta skills, routines, learning, and so. But now, would you like to continue, or is there something you like Risto add?
No, I think this just reminds me of the first thing we started with this course is kind of like the personal training or training your core, your physical body core. This is just reminds me that some of these things are kind of in the, whatever is your sport, whatever is your profession. I think some of these things go to the core, the meta skills that you probably need, these self-awareness, self-reflection. And then the meta routines are kind of like those exercises you need to do kind of every day or every week, no matter what your sport is.
Yeah, that's
so
good.
that remind me of that. Yeah.
Yeah, that's good metaphor.
Good. Any comments from anybody else while I grab the screen? Anything in the chat?
Maybe if I say something.
Go
I'm
ahead.
not
Yeah,
not a
go
Finn,
ahead.
so I don't have to be quiet. But while Jari
Good for you.
was showing let's say that kind of onion as well of the leaders in a way of how it's connected to other systems and what are the skills and what you should think about. It made me think also about not just for the leaders, but in change management projects, the ethics of it, because there's change that might not be ethical, or there are means to promote change that might not be ethical, and we should think, should we do it, or how should we do it in a way that it's like open and we're not using devious methods. That's right.
I think this is very, very pivotal and crucial thing that we, in a part of self-awareness, that we are aware of our own values, or at least explicate those and think how we manifest those in practice, and then what are our behavior based on those values personally. And as a helper or facilitator, it's so that we don't easily what we serve when we make a deal with the client. Is there, because sometimes I have faced a situation where I was asked to be, let's say, evaluating people and then reporting to the management. And I said, this is not my role, and I can't do that, and it's not a deal. And it must be some other process where you do that, for example. And maybe there is this kind of situation where there's sort of negative practices or unethical requests, and we should be aware of that and see the boundaries. But then also collectively, when we are doing the change, of course, there is sometimes different agendas in a way that strategic management wants to change something, and then there is this kind of cultural conflicts in a way that how the change is asked to be pushed through. And as facilitator, feel there that these ethical questions are important indeed. And but Risto, would you like to say something?
Yeah, I was just thinking about nowadays the world we live in. It's that kind of the politics comes into corporate politics as well quite a lot. We read the news, and many of you are in different parts of the planet, so it's just the collective values. We can have whatever personal values we have as an employee or a facilitator or whatever, but then the kind of the collective values of the organization and what's the interface between current political values, especially in large companies, of course. Sometimes it might be more beneficial for business to be the same value as the current political climate. That's another age-old thing about humanity.
And sometimes they are not easy situations where we are having this kind of
absolutely.
But that can be, of course, when we are working in an organization, that sometimes we don't share the values that are maybe pushed in organization in general. But I think these kind of helping roles, it's even more important, because then we can really end up being conflictual situation with ourselves, and that's not in a way nice place. But being aware that there are these tensions.
Absolutely. And I will now continue more on the societal level. So kind of one of the final things of this course is, we've been talking about organizational transformation, sure. But is there a bigger change And I'm sure everybody knows in their bones that there are a lot of things changing on this planet, not just ways that organizations think. So kind of adding one more layer to the onion we started with is the society we lived in, something we just quickly touched upon. And I think I'm referring to these two reports that are globally well known, the Future of Jobs reports and the latest one just from last January, that there is seems to be going this transformation of work-life skills globally. And what does it mean into this context? And the thing I'm pulling from this latest report from the World Economy Forum is that, okay, if we're talking, we started this course by saying that there's this uncertainty and we have organizations, whatever your organization is, whether it's a public sector, whether it's a university, whether it's a, a business and a private sector, there is this external pressure to change. And, typically they are, maybe you need to be more, you need to have a large market share, or you need to come up with new products. But on a global level, at least according to this report, I think it puts really nicely that there are they list these 5 pressures or transformations that are affecting all organizations on the planet. The first one is the digitalization, and they call it the broadening digital access, but I would just add the AI into this, that we are still in this, broadly speaking, in this process, that our ways of working, the ways we organize and the way we do things is being very strongly digitalized. And AI is just part of that bigger trend. And then we are living in a general economic slowdown at the moment, with its bumps in the last couple of months globally. And the third one is the climate change. They put it nicely and politically here that it's the climate change mitigation that organizations need to start adapting their ways of working, because the planet seems to be changing. The climate is changing quite a lot in different parts of the world. Fourth big transformation going on is the demographic shift. And this, of course, depends on what part of the planet you come from. Some of the Western countries, we have the population pyramid is quite, top heavy. And then we have, let's say, other countries where the population pyramid is totally upside down. So it's very bottom heavy. And we get, depending on what part of the world you come from, there might be, demand for skills, or there may be just too much of skills and all of these things. But, there are big democratic shifts, generational shifts happening in many workplaces. And then last but not least is the reading the news, the geo-economic fragmentation and the geopolitical tensions, and they are just coming in to the businesses and the organizations and what the organizations are doing. Well, perhaps you have seen these. These are one of the easy, because everybody loves a list. So here's from the World Economy Forum reports from 2 years ago, and the one from last January is kind of like, okay, what do they survey about 1,000 companies globally, and they survey and collect together, okay, what do these 1,000 surveyed companies think are the future skills required? And here's the list on the left-hand side is the one from 2023, and then the latest one is here on the right-hand side. And it's just very interesting to look at these. They haven't changed much. We have analytical thinking number 1 still globally as a future skill. Creative thinking has gone from 2 to number 4. Resilience, flexibility, and agility has become number 2. And let's see, what else can we pick? Leadership and social influence is number 3 in the list. My favorite is number 5, motivation and self-awareness. Self-awareness, you Jari just talked about. Motivation, I didn't know it was a skill, but according to this report, motivation is a skill, and actually a very important skill in the future of work.
Yeah. I think
but if you look at these things, if you look at the top 10, and then look at the color codings, in the top 10, the only yellow one, which is management skills, is talent management. And the rest of them are self-efficacy, working with others. Technology skill is number 6, and it is technological literacy. So it's kind of like even a meta skill of technology, which is like super interesting. And the other thing that is very interesting is number 11, AI and big data. You might not agree with this list, but I think it's very thought-provoking that this list has AI at skills number 11. Jari, you wanted to say something? Sorry.
Yeah. I mean, it is very interesting also that Analytical thinking is first, but then systems thinking is 12, because I would like to connect those, because I think analytic thinking without having a system understanding is a little bit can be very narrow also, but of course it depends how you interpret this. But
Yeah.
actually, there's pretty much those meta skills as well, as we were referring just
Absolutely.
minutes ago.
Yeah.
So
And it's become, if you compare it to the 23, it's become even more meta, if you will.
yeah.
Because the number 9, the yellow one, it's still kind of very meta. It's not about, it's about how do you manage other people's talent. It's not like, not a direct skill as such, but it's kind of like management skill. But anyway, just thought-provoking of what it means. But the thing I want to really pull out of from a report is this, which is a direct quote, is saying that, according to all the 1,000 companies they surveyed, and then when they put it together, this is what the report says. It says that this combination of cognitive self-efficacy and interpersonal skills within the top 5 emphasizes the importance ascribed by respondents to having, and here's my highlighting, an agile, innovative, and collaborative workforce where both problem-solving abilities and personal resilience are critical for success. So what I take from this is something that we've more or less started with, that it looks like a lot of organizations are building themselves to be more agile, more responsive, more sustainable in many ways. And this is kind of, echoing the same. It looks like there needs to be an agile, innovative, collaborative workforce, highlighting really the collaborative, because that's something we've been trying to put really between the lines and even on the lines of this course, collaboration, working with people. And what you, Jari, talked about was very much about the interpersonal things about it. So, and personal resilience, I think that goes into your model about intrapersonal things, about self-awareness and everything as well. That is that you understand yourself really well in this changing and uncertain world. So if you don't believe us, then maybe you believe the World Economy Forum that this is something to take into account. But actually, what I'm going to highlight from this is the kind of putting on my facilitation eyeglasses on again, because I believe this is a demand for facilitation. If these were, you remember those 5 things that the report listed as pressures for organizations to change. So there is this change going on. We're still having this ongoing digital transformation, the whole AI thing. And then the other huge transformation, the climate change mitigation or transformation. So let's, abbreviate to the ESGs. It's very much, these are skills transformations. It's not just that, skills remain the same, organizations remain the same, but now, you just change some tools or change some technology or change some markets. You can look at these transformations as huge skills transformations. And that's what the World Economy Forum reports are saying as well. There's enormous upskilling and reskilling of workforce to be done, which means that there needs to be people who are helping the old experts to work with the new experts, to work with the AI. How does this work together, and how do you make these collaborations work? Helping others to see the bigger pictures, helping others to maybe see the long-term impacts, something we talked quite a lot about a couple of lectures ago, and just in general helping others to work in the uncertainty or even not work, how you help others who are not employed to work in uncertainty. So I'm fully believe that, and I'm highlighting this demand for meta skills. And just like Jari, you said, these skills that are not traditionally specific to certain profession or education, that these are, you could call these leadership skills, and I don't think you would be wrong, that these are, we call them here facilitation skills or meta skills. Something like seeing the big picture. Do you have the ability to look into this? Skills to iterate, clarify objectives, something we practiced. Having these dialogues, continuous dialogues about meanings, not endless, but continuous, if you understand the difference. How do you bring different people together? I think you have shown, everybody here has shown this amazing ability to just, we randomly put you together and you're fine. I think that's a skill, that's an ability. Which brings to the next one, facilitating diverse experts and people to work together, and then your self-reflection, your intrapersonal skills. How do you relate yourself kind of internally, but also importantly, your relationship to others. Yep, Jari.
Yeah, I think adding to my list is this well-being and keeping up our. Well, I was interested also this motivation that keeping our motivation up. That I think it's also a skill, but also this kind of keeping up the boundaries. That because we are quite a bit living in a boundaryless. There's a lot of temptations that we are in boundaryless. That we can communicate all the time, we can do work all the time, and we get a lot of messages and so on. And there's a lot of demands to our attention and energy. So this well-being and kind of keeping up our resilience, but then also kind of ability to act and be present and so on. So I think that's something that is required much more consciously from all of us as well.
So another way of looking, this is from thesis work last year about sustainability skills, kind of building the better planet, building sustainable organizations. That kind of the importance of that. We have these general professional competencies, whatever all of you have. Maybe you're an engineer, software engineer, maybe you're a mechanical engineer, maybe you're a marketing expert. That would be kind of professional competencies. And then on the upper right-hand corner, we have these context-specific sustainability competencies. But the big bubble in the middle is what the literature says is that, for the sustainability transformation, these are the key sustainability competencies. Now, if you look at them, well, they sound a bit familiar, don't they? Because if you start really looking at them, I would say that, well, these are generally speaking the change facilitation competencies, which are more or less actually the same skills that Jari has been talking about, the meta skills. And which kind of brings us together that this is another way of looking at what are the future transformation competencies or skills, or what are the future skills in general, the kind of the basic skills that good leaders and good people and good workers and employees should have. And we get this kind of this systems thinking that Jari, you talked about, understanding larger systems and their interconnection, values thinking, something we just talked about a little bit, understanding the values. And we talked earlier about what is valuable work, what's valued in general. Strategic thinking. I don't think this should be taken as a given. This is a skill. How do you think strategically? Getting things done, which brings me to the next one, which is really the getting things done. You have skills to actually do something and not just philosophize or theorize things. Problem-solving skills, collaboration skills. How do you work with diverse groups of people? How do you work with people and AI and whatever comes to collaboration will be soon. And then the futures thinking, ability to envision different kind of potential futures and scenarios. And the last but not least is the self-leadership and well-being that you just highlighted. The ability to take initiative and action on your own personal growth, but also kind of towards others. How do you build environments and places where people feel healthy mentally, that they can actually continue working with these things? So just kind of summarizing this up, that yes, of course, these are key sustainability transformation competencies because they are, I would say, general transformation and change leadership and facilitation competencies. That whatever the transition is, then these things kind of pop up, these meta skills. So if we put it into what we did in this course, kind of that, I would say generally the uncertainty and any transformation bring forth these things. You need to see the big picture. You need to zoom out from the existing world. And of course, this was exercise 1 and 2. Just simply, what's the context, temporal context? Then how do you have the skills or the facilitation skills or getting things done that clarify the objectives? When the world goes topsy-turvy, you probably need to start discussing meanings, calibrating the meanings. Do we share this? Does this mean the same thing as it used to be? So exercises 3 and 4 were quite a lot about that. And then bringing different people together, different skills together, facilitating different experts. That was actually exercise 5 quite a lot. But also exercises 3, 4, 1, and 2, because you're a diverse group of people and we mashed you together. And which brings to kind of your reflection and hoping that you kind of also reflected yourself. What kind of a person are you? whether it's facilitating or leading others. And all of these exercises, because we at least believe the well-being is at the core. You cannot work in uncertain environments unless you kind of have certain mental healthness. It's just too taxing, it's too stressful in the long term. Which brings me, you probably remember this slide from the very beginning, kind of the leadership question mark. I think traditional leadership has been changing, of course. It's always in a kind of dynamic and fluctuation, but to bring you back into this, that we probably need a lot of new kinds of leaders for these transformations that we're living in. And it's not about necessarily how many people report to you. Leadership is not about you. It's very much about your relation to others. And there's not a single mold. There's many ways of doing leadership. You don't have to be a formal leader. You can be just an example to others, or somebody else values your opinions, that kind of leadership. And then it changes as you change. Maybe you're that kind of a leader then, and now you're this kind of a leader because you change. The world changes. Your workplace changes, so forth. Which brings to the last breakout is your next steps. So you can go back to the breakout rooms and share your thoughts. Concrete change. What will you promise? Promise is a strong word. But what do you promise, or what do you think that will actually change in your thinking, way of working, whatever? Maybe your next steps. We're not going to tell you this is what you should do next. Let's have you tell yourself to others. And please write a few lines into the chat. Yeah, just looking at them. But also, time to start wrapping up the whole course. That was the last lecture. What to do next week? Well, you pretty much just did that in the breakout room, so look at your own personal notes. You know what to do next week, or what you at least promised or talked about. But don't leave yet. There's just like before, a summarization of today's lecture, more or less. Some of the main points, further readings, a couple of books there. Brave New Work, then a Finnish book by Outi Sivonen. I just learned that Outi was also in the Finnish newspaper because she has written another book about leadership. But the one that I mentioned there is really good. Unfortunately, only in Finnish. Then the reports over there, and about the sustainability changes, the thesis I mentioned, and so forth. And I think, do you know, Jari, the Future of Work online course? I think that's still available. Why? I have no reason why it's not. So if your future of work is something you're interested in. A couple of years ago, or actually the very first year we did this, already 5 years ago, we actually got together some of the Finnish companies and asked them to share their facilitation tools. So this link has been shared before, but here it is again, free tools to start facilitating things. Some of them are more detailed to specific domains. All the Finnish reading audiences, we have this handbook on how to build constantly learning organizations that I edited, and Jari was involved as well. Soon should be an audiobook, so check it out. And then actually you're probably thinking about what happens if you have some unfinished business, mainly some of the exercises of lecture attendances. This just noting you, we're closing shop on June 11th. So try to get things done. Jaakko, do you want to share a few thoughts on how this process, or what's going to happen this coming week?
Yeah, sure. So yesterday we have already sent all the emails about the missing assignments. So please go and check your emails for them. And we sent a separate email for each assignment you are missing. And then about the lecture absences, we will deal with them tomorrow. So tomorrow you'll get a similar email about if you have missed a lecture. So we have kind of instructions how to do a replacing assignment for that. But yeah, the deadline for both of these is the 11th, so in a week.
Yeah. Do that, otherwise it can go way into the future.
Yeah, that's true.
And there's a bit of always, those of you who signed with the FITEC, is that they're like the credits and the certificates. We just deliver the information that you have passed the course, and then it's kind of out of our hands and it's in the FITEC hands. Sure, we can try to help you, but often we don't have any answers about that. So you need to ask the FITEC people. Here's your checklist. Attendance form is right there. Jaakko put it a little bit already there. Check the readings and the slides. Jaakko just put the Google Drive link. Everything is there. But important, way important, there is the course feedback. So we're not using the My Courses feedback form. Many of you probably got an email about it. Sorry we didn't catch that early on, but we want everybody's feedback, and many of you don't have access to the My Courses. So it is a basic Google form. Which is you can sign and use, and we really value the feedback. So please do the course feedback. So because we are evaluated partly by the course feedback, so we need to show whether this was good stuff or not good stuff, and of course we want to learn as well. Stop